I know, how many of you have been to Palestine? 1, 2, I can't hardly see you. Okay, good, that's great. So thanks for coming here. You'll see things that you know about already, I'm sure, from the West Bank. So we know this is about the West Bank. That's where we went, and we're going to tell you about that. But we also know that all eyes are on Gaza. And, you know, it's so heartbreaking. And I hope you know about the global Samud flotilla. And that's a picture of it when it first got started. And, you know, if you do know about them, you know they're taking humanitarian aid. They're trying to break the siege, you know, the people that are being starved to death. And there's something like 50 boats, 44 nations represented. And they are getting closer and closer to Israel every day, and therefore encountering more and more aggression from Israel. And this takes the form of drones flying overhead, surveilling them, explosives falling down on them. And there's been one injury that I know of, maybe a couple. The boats have been hurt a little bit, but they're still going forward. So let's just keep the flotilla in our hearts, and if you're not following it, you know, you should, and support it however you can, vocally or to your friends or whatever. Okay. So that said, I'm gonna let Melody get us started here talking about our delegation. It was February 2025, and so she's gonna let you know a little bit how we got in there and what happened.
So as Ken said, we went on a delegation in February of 2025, and we had, however, previously gone to Palestine on our own in 2015. So this was our second visit. And this time we decided we would go with an organized group, and we went with community peacemaking teams, which is an organization that puts teams in places where there is violent conflict, and those localities invite the teams to come. And Palestine has been unique for them because CPT has been in Palestine, in Hebron specifically, since the mid-'80s. So they've consistently had a presence there. And this delegation, I would say, captures so the effects of the occupation on the Palestinian people, and also the forms of resistance and that the Palestinians continue to practice. And so you'll learn some about that. In general, we went to 3 places as a part of the delegation, and we went to Bethlehem. We spent most of our time in Hebron, and we also went to Jerusalem. And Ken and I also spent some time in Bethlehem and Jerusalem on our own before the delegation started. So you're going to hear some about those experiences that we had and some of the issues that arise when you're talking to people in the West Bank.
So I hesitate to say things that you may already know, but because some of you may not be familiar, I will say sort of some basic things here. If you don't know, Palestine in that's the leftmost part of that slide, Palestine was populated by Palestinians. And before Israel became a state, there were a number of Zionist settlements in white over there on the far left. It says Jewish settlements. What we know from history is that they were exclusionary. They weren't just Jewish, but they were pushing Palestinians away and outside of where they were. So anyway, that was, you can see most of the land was Palestinian. The next slide over, here's the UN plan that was decided upon in 47, and Israel became a state in 48. And you can see nearly half of it was given, and that's not proportional to what the population was at all. Right, so the Palestinians lost a ton of land, right? It was taken away from them, given to Israel as their so-called homeland, which meant that they displaced. You may know about the Nakba in 1948. There were militias. It was armed Israeli people who had been trained and armed by the UK, right? For years, the UK had supported a Zionist movement in Israel. And so they were armed, and they over 700,000 people got removed from their homes. They became refugees in Syria and Lebanon and Jordan and Gaza. Gaza is a refugee camp from people who got removed from their homes. So that in 47 is what it looked like, and then 49 to 67, you know, there was a war in '67, and it captured the northern part where the green is in the second slide. That's the Golan Heights. Israel seized it. They seized a lot of the West Bank, and also large parts of what was Gaza at that time. The Gaza Strip is what was left. And then 2005, this map is a little old, but it still represents the way it looks. You can see it's a bunch of little dotted places because what's happened is settlements. You know, there's something, it's 700 settlements now in the West Bank, and settlements, we're going to show you a picture of one. Settlers go in from outside of Israel. They come to Israel, they're invited there because Israel is trying to create an ethnocentric state, right? Jewish state. And so what that means is they want to have the demographic be majority Jewish. So that means they keep asking people to come in, they give them incentives to come in, they build these things they call settlements, they look like cities, many of them. Anyway, more and more the land has been turned into Israel and is occupied. Military occupation, and we're going to show you some pictures of what that looks like if you haven't seen it before. So you can see it's been decimated into these tiny little Bantustans, really, is what they are. Isolated little enclaves of Palestinians. So if you would flip to the next slide, Pat, I just want to show how it's very parallel to what happened in the U.S. Right? If you can see the lower part of this, and maybe I'm in your way, you can see as time went on, the Native Americans lost their land more and more, and put into reservations. It's just completely analogous. What's happened in Israel is just exactly what happened in the U.S. It's settler colonialism. So just so you can have a handle on that, it's not something that's foreign to U.S. history or mentality. And there's a reason that U.S. and Israel are locked together at the hip. And part of it is history, and part of it is Israel constitutes it is a colonial outpost of the UK and the US at this point, as it was at the beginning. So next slide, Pat. You want to talk about this?
Yeah. So as Ken said, and this map is parallel to the map of 2005 that Ken showed, and how the areas within the West Bank have been divided into three parts, and it's supposed to be area A, B, and C, but I think that C is white or something, so it doesn't show up. But you can see how the area in the West Bank is completely divided into these particular areas. And there's military control over all of that which is in the red. And that includes most of the major cities in the West Bank. And Area B is under control of Palestinian civil control, but Israel has security control, and what that sort of means in every day is that Israel's still in control. And the rest of it is under Israeli control, which is all of the white area. So what that means is that Palestinians, in order to move from place to place, have to move always through an Israeli military controlled area. And the military, having military control is one of the strategies that Israel uses, as you'll see in subsequent slides. But it makes it very difficult for Palestinians to go from place to place. And I also want to say that February seems like a long time ago in the history of what's happening to Palestinians right now, because so much has intensified even since then. So some of the things that you'll be hearing about, we've tried to add some more recent occurrences, and one of those is the increase in restrictions on movement for Palestinians in these areas. All right, this is a more recent slide. This was shared by one of our friends in Palestine of the plan that Smoltrich, who is I never remember what he is, the Minister of Finance?
Finance, but he has with the Ministry of Defense, so he actually also is part of the occupation decision maker.
So this is the future plan. Those yellow areas under this plan will be the areas that the Palestinians are allowed to live. And you can see that they are very small and much more restricted area than what exists today. and the rest of it will be occupied by Israel. So it's definitely in the planning books for what Israel intends to do in the West Bank, and I think it's probably already beginning. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, let me just add something about this slide. So these are the cities. The ones in yellow are the cities. The one down below is Hebron. There's Ramallah and
Jericho,
Jenin, Jenin and Tukaram up top. And I'm missing one. What's the one? It's East Jerusalem, isn't it?
Yeah, well, part of East Jerusalem.
Yeah. So they are trying to herd, it's a reservation system, right? They're trying to herd Palestinians into enclosed, and I mean walls. It's apartheid. Walls separated from everyone else, checkpoints everywhere, and they are terrible things to go through for Palestinians, humiliating things to go through. We'll show you a picture. So they want the land, but not the people. Right? They want to exclude the people from the state of Israel. When they annex the West Bank, they're not going to annex the yellow because they don't want Palestinians in the state of Israel. Right? They're going to annex everything else. So what you can see from those pictures is the idea, the isolated little Bantustans and the plan to have them all herded into these cities. There is no way it's a delusion to think that there's a two-state solution that's going to happen. And so you can see from this cartoon, there's the international people, the states, 140 some nations of the world say we recognize Palestine and we're going to have a two-state solution. There is absolutely no way Israel will allow a two-state solution. In fact, they've already destroyed the very idea of it with all of the settlements and the Bantustans and the walls, and so it's not feasible anymore. It's an illusion, and it's sort of a way, I believe, that people in all these nations can go, oh, we're with Palestine, and Palestine, we sort of wash our hands, we're not responsible, we're standing with Palestine, but they're not doing anything to make life better for the Palestinians. They're still under military occupation, and in fact, it's getting worse all the time. The only real solution is a one-state solution with equal democratic human rights for everyone. Israel is no way going to allow that because they want an ethnocentric state. This is about Jewish supremacy, right? It's a form of white supremacy. It's racist. That's what they're about. So they're not going to have either two-state or one-state. A friend of ours said either, the Palestinians are either going to get out, get killed, or submit to complete oppression. That's their choice.
Next slide, Pat. So part of our time, our own time before the delegation and on the delegation was spent in Jerusalem. And this picture is from the Mount of Olives, and what you're seeing in the center is the old city, the walled city, which is a square, and you're seeing the mosque that was on Al-Aqsa, right? Al-Aqsa, which is to be the place for Muslims to worship. But even today I saw that settlers and Jewish people are oftentimes storming this area and taking this area over from the Palestinians and the Muslims in the area. So Jerusalem, as is Bethlehem and Hebron, are contested areas partially because of the religious significance and cultural significance for all of the people that live in Palestine. Jerusalem, this old city itself, is divided into quarters. We'll see some pictures of what that experience is like for Palestinians who go to the old city. And as we learned on one of our tours, what's happening in Jerusalem is there's lots of building. If you can look really closely, there's lots of cranes in the background. In West Jerusalem, there's lots of development going on. East Jerusalem, which is the primary area for Palestinians, no development is happening. So that juxtaposition of this wildly developing area and then having Palestinian neighborhoods and areas, residential areas, not being, just sitting in some cases just sort of barren. This is the old city. Entering into the old city of Jerusalem is through these stone gates, and there's one all around the wall of the old city. This happens to be Damascus Gate, which is the entryway into the Muslim quarter, where we stayed in a hostel owned by Palestinians. And it's on the east side of Jerusalem, so if you could see behind the photographer, that area would be a bustling commercial area for Palestinians, as is, you can see here, this area. But if you look closely, you also see who else is at this entrance. On one side are police, and on the other side are IDF soldiers. And there are, this was new since we were there in 2015, there are police stations that are above this gate watching at all times what's happening of Palestinians going in and out of a very vibrant marketplace for them. Okay, Pat.
Yeah, and they don't only just stand there, they stop and frisk people to the max. You know, we're just there. All these people who go there with their religious beliefs, Christians and Muslims and others, right? Jewish people. And so there's lots of tourists walking around, but we saw this happen. We're walking down the street and people are, all over the place, and they yank out Muslim, or I should say Palestinian, not necessarily Muslim. There's a lot of Christian Palestinians. They yank them out, throw them up against the wall, stop them first, shake them down, grab them, shake them up, scare them, because they can arrest them, and they often do, take them away, put them in prison, they kidnap them, really, off of the street, not to mention in their homes. They'll break into their homes in the middle of the night and grab somebody, a lot of times the kids, take them away. I mean, it's a terror regime. And part of the way they inflict domination and fear is by grabbing people just on the street and doing that kind of thing right there.
So we had several experiences while we were in Palestine of visiting shops. And I initially thought, it felt like we were being used as Americans. We Americans have money, here we're going to take you to these shops. But the picture of the shop, of the pottery shop on the right is one of the last places we went. It's actually not in Jerusalem, it's in Hebron. But I realized at that point, hearing the story of this shopkeeper, that what our team leaders were doing, or the delegation leaders were doing, was showing us Palestinian resistance in the form of continuing their lives. And part of that is keeping their businesses alive. So the pottery place on the right had been stormed by IDF soldiers on 2 occasions within a matter of, probably a week, within a week span. The soldiers came in, they were looking for a person who they said lived above the pottery shop. And the owner said, we don't know who that person is. That person, if they lived here, it would have been 5 or 8 years ago, because we know who lives there now. And of course, the soldiers didn't believe them. So what the soldiers did was to destroy all of their pottery that was on the shelves, or at least some of it. Just, completely destroyed it. And then a few days later, they came again looking for the same person, still not believing that the person wasn't there, and did some more destruction. But as you can see, the shop is still vibrant. These are all hand-painted pieces, by the way. And one of the sort of heartfelt stories is that their customers came anyway and bought pottery pieces that had been destroyed or had been damaged. So they were getting a lot of support. So there's that notion that we're not going to give up. We're going to continue to do our craft, regardless of the threat. In spite of the threat from the Israeli military. The picture on the left is in Jerusalem. It is the educational bookstore, and this is a Palestinian in East Jerusalem, not too far from the Damascus Gate that we just saw. And they have 2 stores, this one which is primarily English books, and then the store across the street is primarily books in Arabic and lots of school books, I think, for kids. The IDF came, they shut them down, and this was like a couple days before we got to Jerusalem. shut down both of the stores and arrested the owners. And so this is the kind of threat that Palestinian business owners can experience at any time. And the owners of the bookstore are quite outspoken about their own activism. They were in jail for a few days, and then IDF let them go, and they opened again. And just like in the pottery shop, when we went into the bookstore, there were all kinds of people coming to support them, to buy books, and to support their activism and to support their business. Okay, Pat. So this is a picture, I think this is the last slide about Jerusalem. This is another project that's an act of resistance. This is the neighborhood of Silwan that is below, if you go outside the old city, below the Wailing Wall, you go down into this sort of valley, and it's a Palestinian neighborhood called Silwan. And there's a group of women, actually led by an American woman, who started a project called Eyewitness. And that project is to paint the sets of eyes on buildings, and most of the eyes are on residences. And you can see, this is only just a little part of the neighborhood that was on that side of the valley. And they have sets of, some of the eyes there were well-known Palestinians, but also George Floyd, and help me here, Ken. Malcolm X, and other, prominent leaders. Any of you who know about Palestine's resistance, Rachel Corrie, who was an American who was killed in 22 years ago when she was resisting the IDF. Her eyes are on the wall. And it's this quiet group of people. I think there's only a few women, and they go and they paint these either on the wall itself, or they put them on vinyl and they tie them on there. And it's their act of resistance to let the Israeli government and soldiers know that they're watching, and that these are sets of eyes that are watching what they're doing. And it definitely is an act of resistance on their part. And the young woman who gave us the tour told us that some of the families are worried about allowing the eyes to be on their houses because it will put a spotlight on them, right? But after the first one did it, they were like, no, this is an act of us resisting what's happening to our village. And there are settlements that are around this particular neighborhood. So those eyes are watching all the time what's happening.
Let me add one little thing here, you have to imagine that they're occupied. They're soldiers in the streets all the time. It's not uncommon. In fact, it's very common that Israel comes in with bulldozers and demolishes houses. In fact, it's happening in Silwan. A lot of houses are getting demolished on a regular basis. So they're in the midst of this devastating occupation being watched. Israel has got an international reputation for surveillance, right, in IT and technology and all that. So they are being watched in multiple ways. There's cameras, there's people on the street, all of this, and yet they go out and do it. That's courageous, right? That's what they're up to. They're not backing down. We went to Bethlehem, and this is taken from the Church of the Nativity, where the Church of Nativity is supposedly where Christ was born. And normally it's chock full of people. 10 years ago when we went, there were throngs of people, in the streets and in the church, not so much this time. And in large part, the tourist business, the economy of Israel is in a hurt, big time, because people are not coming there because of the genocide, right? We know about the genocide, and everybody knows about the thing going down in the West Bank, but people are not coming there either because they don't feel safe or because they don't want to come to Israel because of what Israel is doing. Anyway, there's a lot of places that we went to that, there's not many people there anymore. There were at one time. So this is Bethlehem from, a common square. And in Bethlehem, if you haven't seen pictures of the wall, the apartheid, so-called apartheid wall, separation wall, this is what it looks like. On the left, you can see this watchtower, and I want to mention this watchtower a little bit later. There's gunners up there. There are armed soldiers they're snipers up there in the watchtower and in the lower windows. In fact, we encountered one. We walked past that lower window one time 10 years ago, and we looked to the window, and there was a guy with a gun pointed at us. You know, we weren't the target. We're the privileged white people from the U.S., so, you know, we just walked on by. But it's an armed, you can see the barbed wire, you can see how high it is. It's a nasty, ugly thing, and it separates people from their fields, people from their relatives. You know, it is, you know, a serious obstruction to Palestinian life. And right next to this wall on the left is a refugee camp that we're going to show you about. There's refugee camps all over the place. I think there's like 3 of them in Bethlehem, 5 of them in Bethlehem. We got to go to one of them. You can see on the right that people, you know, there's a lot of graffiti on the Palestinian side, and a lot of beautiful paintings too, which we might be able, I think we have a photo of one. You know Banksy, who he is? Well, he's in Palestine, right? And
or they, Banksy might be.
We don't know who that person is. They, she, he, or multiple people. So that's a picture of, you know, what you see on the inside, and on the right, that's from a rooftop that we were on, just showing you sort of the spread. You can see the water tanks there, the white and black tanks there. Palestinian, most of the water, like over 80%, might be approaching 90%, is controlled by Israel now. And they take it for the settlements. They take the water and they they steal the water, and then they charge the Palestinians for it, right? And so they have plumbing. The settlements, you know, have plumbing and, you know, running water. It looks like our lives a little bit, but the Palestinians have to get water into those tanks. And so they're hurting for the basic necessities like water. And one of the ways that, especially settlers can be really rabid and aggressive and violent, more so than the army, if you can believe it. But a lot of times they shoot holes in these water tanks just, you know, for sport, just to terrorize the Palestinians.
So this is in the Ida refugee camp, which is not the biggest in Bethlehem, but is a big refugee camp. Has been in existence since 1948. And this is sort of the picture on the left shows you sort of the main street, and behind, if I were the photographer, which I think I was actually, behind me is down the road is the wall. The IDF can just open this big gate and out they come with their tanks, and or there's in a tower with their guns, and they can terrorize the people of this refugee camp, who of course had no choice about where to go. And of course there are generations and generations of Palestinians living here, and they themselves have built this up. But you will see the very large key above a keyhole, and the Palestinians who were forced from their homes in 1948 believed that they were going to be able to go home. They took the keys to their houses, and so the key is an important symbol to them of their international right to return home. The significance of this corner is the picture on the right was taken in 2015 when we were there the first time.
On the left.
Oh, on the left, thank you. The picture on the left, the clean one, is the one we took in 2015, and we had been encouraged to go to this refugee camp to find out what it was like to be in a refugee camp. We were standing at this corner and there was nobody around. And we learned that this young man in the picture had been killed by a sniper on that corner, not like a few days before we got there, a few weeks before we got there. And you can see the message, and the picture on the right is the picture that it looks like today, and you can see the bullet holes still today that were probably created by snipers shooting from a tower, just like they shot him, 10 years ago.
Can you read that message?
I can read the message. My name is Aboud Shadi, a 13-year-old Palestinian refugee. I was standing just right here hanging with my friends when an Israeli sniper shot me dead. My soul will remain here chasing the killer and motivating my classmates. I wonder whether the international community will bring justice to Palestinian children. So this is just our delegation talking to our guide through the refugee camp. He grew up in the refugee camp, highly educated. Palestinians are highly educated, in case you think otherwise. And we were standing in front of a poster that talks about their hope and dream that they will be able to return to their land. And it's a very significant and deep felt dream of Palestinians. And you can see the list of villages in English on the left-hand side and in Arabic on the right-hand side of the villages where people lived before the creation of the State of Israel.
Yeah, so one thing about this young man here, he's, like Melody said, very articulate, very educated, very pissed off. And one of the reasons, well, for generations they've been controlled and made refugees in a camp, but he made explicit to us that they live right next to Jerusalem. Bethlehem's just right next to Jerusalem. They're not allowed to go to Jerusalem. We can come and go. They can't go to Jerusalem, right? Holy place, Al-Aqsa Mosque, all of that. They also can see the sea. They can see the Mediterranean Sea from the rooftops. This young man has never been to the sea. Neither have all the other refugees in this camp. And it's not uncommon throughout the West Bank. They're not allowed to go there. So they're completely controlled and contained, if you can imagine this. And that's been his life story. It's just a picture from a rooftop. It's interesting because at one point these Palestinians were saying, we're not going to beautify that wall at all. It's ugly. We want the world to see how ugly it is, the apartheid wall. But at some point, Banksy came in and started painting the wall, these amazing, caricatures and cartoons and satirical things about the occupation. So they decided, okay, yeah, we will do graffiti, we will paint. And this is from a rooftop we were standing on, how do they get up there to paint that? They're occupied, right? There's soldiers everywhere. They got up there to paint that word hope. Again, it's like amazing resilience. You know the word Samud, the Samud flotilla. It means resilience, resistance, and they are devoted to it. Okay, Pat. This is a picture of a settlement. If you have never seen a picture of one, you might think, oh, settlement, kind of like a little village or something. They develop them. They get them electricity. They have roads that go there. They have trains that go there. These are little cities, and they occupy the top of hills. This is in Bethlehem, and it's overseeing the town of Bethlehem, Beit Sahur. In the foreground is a little kind of oasis. It's this man we've come to know and friend and stay with. His name is Mazen Kumseya, and he is a scientist, taught at Duke, taught at Yale. He's a geneticist. He started a museum of biodiversity. That's his museum there. And we visited it, and it's sort of one of these beautiful, they're educating children, they're educating adults. He's a professor at the University of Bethlehem. So it's right there in the shadow of this thing. And, at any time, Israel can just come and choose to wipe them out. And they know that. They're living for the present. They're building something. They're building something despite the impending thing that's over their head. Okay, Pat. Just another picture of a settlement. There's the wall. You can see one side where the settlers are. The other side, that's stolen land, right? That was all Palestinian land, for their flocks, their olive trees and so forth, made into this, just to give you an image.
I think the biggest settlement is 60 or 80,000 people. City. So most of the time we are on our delegation, we were in Hebron, and this is just a lovely picture of the 4 people who were leading our delegation, all young people. They all have their own stories, family stories about how the occupation has affected their families, but you can see they're happy and joyful, and that's also a part of Samud and a part of resistance, is to just keep going about your lives and being as happy as you can be. A little comment about Hebron itself. It was, and maybe still is, the largest commercial center in Palestine. It's a fairly large city, and you can tell that it both historically was a commercial center and currently is. You can see in the background, a part of the city is quite modern and commercial, and lots of neon lights and coffee shops and those kinds of things. It continues to thrive, and as do these young people.
Yeah, this is in Hebron while we were there and took these pictures. The left side is one of these checkpoints. Yeah, it's not even the worst of them. And you can see how they cram them into cages. And one by one, they let them through a little turnstile there, and they have to come up and show their papers and, prove that they're, not criminals or something like that, and they allow them to come in. But the kind of humiliation, can you imagine when there's like lots of these checkpoints? This is just the one that leads to the mosque. There's a mosque, Ibrahimi Mosque, you may have heard of it. It's in Hebron. There's a story associated with that. I'll skip that story for now. But the Israelis control it. And so they're going to prayer. There's a call for prayer happening, right? And they're trying every day to get to the mosque to pray, and they have to go through this gauntlet. And we're there as accompanying them. We're there as part of this delegation to watch and report and witness, what happens. Lots of them don't get through to make the call to prayer to the mosque, and they bring their prayer rugs with them and they pray right there. They'll just get right down, right there in that checkpoint. They'll drop to the floor and they can hear the prayers, and they'll pray right there at the checkpoint. On the right, the top is the marketplace in the old city. It's bustling, lots of little shops there. And people go out and they're busily doing, their shopping and everything like that. We shop there. And on the bottom right is the thing on one of those buildings, the far building on the left, is where the CPT offices is where we stayed. And it used to be that wall, see the wall going across the street there, wasn't there. They build these walls and barriers to chop up the city in such a way to make it impossible for people to go from point A to point B directly, right? They could go into this, there's a street over there called Shuhada Street, thank you, which was a bustling commercial street shut down now entirely, it's defunct. I'll show you a picture of that. But that opened right onto it, now not so much. We actually went to an elementary school, we'll show you a picture of that, to accompany kids going to school. And if we had been able to go straight there, it would have taken us something like 10 minutes to get there. But they have all these blockades and blockages everywhere. And so to get there, we had to go way around and come around. I think it took us like 45 minutes to get to this place. And that's part of the daily disruption to life for Palestinians. And all in large and small ways, they're trying to make life unlivable for people there.
So just to add, the old city, Hebron Old City, is an area of contention. And so the blocking off of many of the streets is a way to contain the Palestinians, to keep control of Palestinians in the old city of Hebron specifically. These next images are images of the IDF in interaction or watching, surveilling Palestinian areas of the old city of Hebron. And as Ken said, we had to go through a checkpoint. We didn't have any trouble going through the checkpoint to get to Shahada Street, which you see in the lower right. But the Palestinians cannot go there, and so they don't make it through the checkpoint. The presence of the soldiers, it can happen anytime. Soldiers can come down the street, and you can see the one on the picture on the left, where not sure why they are approaching this young father, but they are. One of the things that's happening in the old city of Hebron is that Israeli settlers have moved into the old city, and they have been invited to move into the old city to occupy and take over Palestinian houses. They don't necessarily live there. Some of them do, some of them don't. It's like a second home. But it takes over the space that was once Palestinian. So these are just interactions or the presence of the soldiers that Palestinians in Hebron experience. We'll let the pictures speak for themselves.
This is the school I mentioned that we accompanied kids to school. Well, in this case, the school was shut down for arbitrary reasons. No reason was given. They just decided to shut the school down.
They shut down the checkpoint, so they couldn't get to the school.
Couldn't get to the school, right. That's shutting the school down. So we went out, and these kids, you can see they're playing soccer with a little water bottle, right? You know, the kids, they showed up anyway. The teachers asked people to show up, and the teachers showed up. Those are teachers up in the upper left, in the left-hand picture. They showed up, and the press came and interviewed them. They were determined to not just walk away from this, right? And so in order to get to the school, you can see there's a checkpoint in the background there. And in the right, upper right, those are the teachers talking to each other. And so we stood there for a while and watched them, and, they weren't allowed in, and so they stood there for maybe an hour or something like that. The little kid standing with me on the right was a scream to me. I mean, he was like, he didn't speak English, and I don't speak Arabic, but he was really interested in us, and he kept coming over, and I was taking notes, right? I'm writing about what I'm seeing, and he was looking, he was getting real close. He was just standing right next to me, and he wanted to see everything I was doing. He's being my little buddy, right? So he would walk away and come back and forth. And at one point, I was already leaning on this rock. I was just standing there like that. And he came up and he mimicked me. He mirrored me, just to be funny. The kids are charming. And so and then somebody snapped a shot of the two of us, being mirrors of each other. Fell in love with the kids there, I'll tell you.
So these are pictures of something that's happened since we were there. So what happens is that Israeli settlers just come in and they just take over a Palestinian house. And this one was recent. The picture on the right shows this entryway into the old city. You can see sort of this archway in the back. And that area on the right-hand side was a tower, a military tower. There are these, a couple shops that were always open when we would come and go from the old city. And just in the last couple of weeks, Israeli settlers moved in to a Palestinian home and, have displayed their, the Israeli flag. And this happens, and the Palestinians can't really do anything about it, right? And so it's just an indication of that Israel is continuing to perpetuate and actually accelerate the practices of, sort of removing the Palestinians from more and more of places that, that they own. This is the Ibrahimi Mosque that we talked about in the previous slide that showed people going through the checkpoint. In order to go to the mosque, this mosque to pray, they have to go through that checkpoint. And as Ken said, there was an event in 1994 where a Israeli settler went to the mosque and murdered 125 Palestinians, I think, something like that. And instead of charging this person with a crime, what they did was to take over the mosque and divide it into half, so that today, when we were there, half of it's a mosque and half of it's a synagogue. And we learned since we were there, and this is a picture of it, that the Israeli government has wrested the control over the mosque from the municipality of Hebron, and so now Israel has total control over the mosque, which of course for Muslims is a sacred place. All right, one of the things that we did while we were there, and I'm just going to try to be as quick as possible, but this was a lot of what we did on our delegation, is we met with families who have been in one way or another affected by the policies of the Israeli government. And these three pictures are examples of the meetings that we had with the families, and I'm just going to tell their story quickly. The picture on the left is a family that had an olive grove and a very popular restaurant at the top of the mountain across the valley. The IDF came in and destroyed many of their olive trees and shut down their restaurant. And I believe it was a decade ago. And they have been fighting ever since to try to get their land back. And they actually think they have a good chance because the young woman in the pink jacket and her brother are also Israeli citizens, but they've been fighting for their land since then. The family that's pictured with our delegation up in the right-hand corner is a large family that lives in outside of Hebron, on the edge of Hebron, I think. I think they're large landowners, and I think this is part of what happens is that Israel attacks Palestinians who own a lot of land, who have a lot of power and a lot of money. So it's a large family, and you can see the man in the cafe was the patriarch. And you know, what Israel does is to establish some sort of a military base right next to somebody's land. They call it the military area, and that means that they can, oust, Palestinians from the land, and also to watch them probably. And this family has experienced, there's a little tiny settlement outpost on one side and a military base on the other side of their house. Their sheep have been poisoned. I think they lost some of their olive trees. Sometimes the IDF will come with a front loader and dump garbage in their, the entryway to their house or even in their house. And they cut off their water. These are common practices of the IDF. And I'm not going to talk about the family at the bottom, but they had similar kinds of experiences, attacking their sheep. IDF will just come around the perimeter of their house. Two families that we met with that are not pictured because they were such sensitive meetings. Two families that had fairly recently, the IDF just comes into their house, oftentimes in the middle of the night. And both of the families had IDF soldiers come in. They make all the men, separate the men from the women and make all the men get on the floor. And in particular, these two families, men will always be arrested, especially young men will be arrested. And almost in all of the families, somebody or multiple people in the family have been arrested. But the two families that we met with, whose houses have been ransacked in the last, few months, young women were arrested, and our delegation leaders were surprised that the women were willing to tell the stories of what it was like to be arrested and what it was like to be in prison as 18 or 19-year-olds, and heart-wrenching stories. All of them are heart-wrenching in terms of their experience in prison, experience of being arrested, and how they are treated are just heart-wrenching. So one of the things that our delegation and anybody who visits Palestine is that, we need to repeat their stories so that those stories go beyond them. And so you here listening is also a way for their stories to get out into the world. Okay.
Let me just add one thing about the prisons there. You may know that the prisons are essentially torture chambers. They're really horrendous stories. People will come out, and if you see pictures of people who've gotten released, they look like they're coming out of Auschwitz, right? They're like skeletons, and they've been, whatever form the torture took, they've been abused, men and women alike. And if you don't know, there's something like 11,000 Palestinian prisoners now in Jewish prisons, and many of them children under the age of 18. Most of them not charged with any particular charge, right? They have what's called administrative detention. They can take you without any charge, don't even tell the parents where their kids are, and put you away, and they can renew this for 6 months at a time. So when, all this business about release the hostages, right? Release the hostages, and also the 11,000 prisoners that are basically hostages as well. So you know that it's really not symmetric at all. So this, maybe some of you have seen the movie, is it called No Other Land? Is that the name of it?
Yes.
Yeah, have you seen that movie, anyone?
Yeah.
You have? Just one person? I highly recommend it if you get to see it. It's about this area that we went to. It's called Masafer Yatta. There's a whole region south of Hebron that's rural, and there are these villages, something like 19, 20 different villages. We went to one of the villages, and they're being besieged by settlers trying to push them out, right? They're trying to steal the land. Same story, military comes in with the settlers work hand in glove with the military, right? They do the aggressions. They come out and they attack people in their homes. And when they do, if the Palestinians complain to the police that that's what's happened, what the military will do is say, oh no, the settlers say you attacked them first. And they arrest the Palestinians. They arrest the Palestinians who make the complaint. Right, so it's about the settlers doing the dirty work for the army, and then the army coming and arresting people, taking them away. They work hand in glove. So that's what's happening. If you've seen, many of you have not seen this film, you will see how this works. You will see actually one of these villages, it happening. The settlers and the military coming in and doing this. This village here, we got to visit soon after a home was demolished. The one on the right. Which is common. They're coming in with bulldozers and knocking down the houses. They're trying to chase people out. There's a settlement right next. In fact, on the left-hand corner, you can see in the background, there's some houses that look pretty decent. That's because that's a settlement, right, next to their village that was built there intentionally. And so the young people, especially the teenagers, will come down and harass them. They'll come into their houses. There were instances of them bringing sheep and bringing the sheep right into their homes in the village. You know, they broke the water pump so they wouldn't have water. There's electricity that goes to the settlement, and you can see a barbed wire fence there too. They're contained within the settlement. They're not allowed to use the electricity that goes to the settlement. So they're under siege. Anyway, we went to visit them. Most recently, there has been a more recent attack where somebody was killed there, same village, and one of the people who gave us the tour there was arrested. So at some point,
Pat, you can go to the next slide.
Oh, and there's the man. The man on the right is the one who was arrested. Thank you. His name is Eid, E-I-D, like the Muslim holiday. On the left, you can see a chicken coop back there, which belongs to the settlers, not to the. And you can see the electricity wires. So these people are hanging on. They're not leaving, right? This is their land. They don't want to be moved out of it, but they're forcibly, bit by bit, being arrested. Their houses knocked down, and this is the story going on in Masafer Yatta, which, Israel wants to claim for itself, right? They want to take over. Ethnic cleansing is what it is. Okay.
So just to add a little bit to the story of the Eid's cousin was killed by a settler who had been sanctioned by the Biden administration, and the Trump administration lifted those sanctions. He came into the village, killed Eid's cousin, who was a teacher. I think he was working with some kids. There was no provocation on his part, and then 16 of the men in the village, including Eid, were arrested after that murder.
Go ahead, Pat. This is the village of Jenin. It's in the northern part of the West Bank, and the reason we're showing you this is because what's going on now, this is since we've been there, is an attack on these villages, especially the refugee camps. You may have read the news that in Jenin and Tulkarm, two northern cities, they have gotten the Gaza treatment. Here come the drones, here come bombs, missiles, tanks, right? They're attacking these villages and marching people out, right? Just kicking them out of the refugee camps. So this is a picture of Jenin a few months ago of, an attack. You might think it looked like Gaza because that's the kind of treatment they're getting. The people in Hebron are not getting this treatment. They're you saw the pictures of the occupation. They're getting occupied. They're not getting blown to bits like this. But what they said was, we're just waiting our turn. Right?
And the aggression around Hebron has increased since we were there.
This is a picture in Tulkarm. You may have seen this. They marched out 1,500 men like that to a prison. Came in, captured them, marched them out to a prison. One of these torture chambers. Humiliation, what's it remind you of, right? Where else have we seen pictures like this? Okay. Go ahead, Pat. We're about the end of the slides. We just wanted to let you know that we in Asheville do this kind of work right here. We make these giant banners. We've got on these bridges every week. We've done it for 20 months. Every week we go out with different messages. You know, we're doing our part. We're trying to get out there and keep it visible. Let people, you know, with whatever messaging, whatever they can see that we can put out there in front of them, goes over an interstate. And so that's our crew out there in Asheville, North Carolina, just to let you know that we're working on this. I think that's our last slide, and it's just a beautiful picture of a kid. You know, we've been talking about Samud, and I thought just to end this, I would get a Palestinian voice out amongst us. And I have a book here. Thank you, Melody. I have a book here that I just picked up. It's a new publication. It's called aptly Samud. It's an anthology of Palestinian writers, and you may know that Palestinians, like people all over the place, we were just in Ireland recently, love the poets. They love their poets, revere their poets. So I want to read you, just as a conclusion, you may know, I don't know if you read Palestinian writers, but this person is not, she is well known. Her name is Noor Hindi. So I'm just going to read you this. It's short. The poem is called "Fuck Your Lecture on Craft, My People Are Dying." Colonizers write about flowers. I tell you about children throwing rocks at Israeli tanks, seconds before becoming daisies. I want to be like those poets who care about the moon. Palestinians don't see the moon from the jail cells and prisons. It's so beautiful, the moon. They're so beautiful, the flowers. I pick flowers for my dead father when I'm sad. He watches Al Jazeera all day. I wish Jessica would stop texting me Happy Ramadan. I know I'm American because when I walk into a room, something dies. Metaphors about death are for poets who think ghosts care about sound. When I die, I promise to haunt you forever. One day, I'll write about the flowers like we own them.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for both of you for going there, being a witness, and showing them love and showing them care, and for coming back and talking, you know, about them and sharing their stories, because that's what Palestinians that live there count on. It's on people like all of us being there and coming back and saying, you know, sharing with people their stories. So from the bottom of my heart, I'm really touched by what you've done, because I know how difficult it is. It's been, the last time I was there was 2016. I haven't been able to go back since. And when you showed that picture at the Damascus Gate, I remember I took my son. My son had never seen Palestine. He was 24. I was terrified for my son because I was scared that any minute they're gonna, because he looks like an Arab, you know. I thought like any minute they could grab him, and all the things that I told him on the way there, and you know, how careful I wanted him to be, because I didn't want him to be arrested and detained and tortured and all that, because all of that happens. So in Hebron, I've gone around and I've visited the families, and we've had lunch with one of the families, and I love hanging out with the kids when I'm there. And that's what the kids were telling me, you know, that they were asking me about the sea. Have you been to the sea? They don't know what the sea smells like. You know, the air, like how the air smells like. Your stories are beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. But if we can stop calling them IDF, because they're not defense forces.
Yes,
they're occupation forces. Can we call them IOF, please?
Yes.
They are occupation forces. They're not defending anything. When they say Israel is defending itself, Israel is not defending itself.
Like, this is evil. What's happened, what's coming down in Palestine and Gaza, in West Bank and Gaza, is evil. And in our country too, all the ICE things going down here, And you don't even have to be to the present. You can look at the past. Our country was founded on genocide and slavery. So it takes us to speak up. I know many people don't want to even kind of look at it. And I want to say, don't look away. You know, look at it. And keep your emotional balance, keep a balanced life, have happiness, have joy, just as the Palestinians do. You know, keep a balance, don't let it beat you, but also hang in there and look at it and stick with it and keep talking about it. Whoever comes, what it is, what it is.